Good afternoon, my inky and pen friends. I received a shipment today from a pen that I've been coveting for a little while. I purchased off of eBay from a seller by the name of Missing Dash Pens DE, I believe. Here's his card. missingpen.com. He was on eBay when I found this pen. They are located in Germany. So I got a really good deal, and it is new unused stock. New unused old stock, I should say. I've been in a brown phase lately, so I went for Pilot 823 in amber, which is a beautiful brown color. Now, I've been assured by many of my pen friends more experienced than I that this pen writes like a dream. If you're looking for a luxury pen, you've met your match in this bad boy. And I can tell you just from the initial caresses of it, this material feels absolutely wildly different from the Asfines and Jinhaos that I've been experimenting with. This is definitely a luxury upgrade. I mean, the packaging alone, it's coming on a satin pillow. I've got a full bottle of Pilot Black ink, and it's the good stuff. So they're not chinsing out. I definitely feel comfortable with this pen. Just to give a quick run through, this is a piston filling pen that is a gold nib pen, and you can see some really pretty details. It's got Pilot engraved on the clip. The clip is firm. It is not spring-loaded, so I don't know how many shirts this would be functional on, but I don't use pen clips as pen clips. For me, they're more of roll stops to keep them from rolling off the desk. Comes with a notes use telling you to keep the nib upward and unscrew the tail plug to make a 2mm gap. White lubricant is applied inside the pen barrel for proper piston functioning, and most piston pens come pre-lubricated with a grease that's safe for the mechanisms. So let's take a look at this. This nib says Pilot 14 karat gold, fine nib, and that is exactly what I ordered, and that's a stunner of a beauty. She's got an ebonite feed. Let's see if we can do a little disassembly. No, she's pretty firmly in there, but we can check out the piston assembly. As you can see, that's a vacuum filler piston assembly. So you draw your piston back, insert your nib past the breather hole into your ink, and push the plunger down, and as it passes this little notch that's at the bottom, you'll hear a click, and then ink will flood the chamber through vacuum. You can tighten that down so you can lessen the chance of inkless spillage, although that's never happened to me. But it is recommended that if you're going to do a longer writing session, you unscrew just a couple of turns so you have about a 2mm gap back there, and that helps to equalize the air pressure inside so that the ink does not burp on you. I've never had that happen either. So this pen grip has got a nice little flare to it. It's very comfortable. There's no real step down to speak of. I mean, there's a slight edge, but it's not uncomfortable. It's got a really nice weight to the hand. I don't ever post my pens, but that is definitely postable, and the balance is still where you want it to be. About 2/3 of the way back, it fits comfortable in the hand. So I would say anybody who wants to post the pen can post the pen, because this is a piston filler. I'm not entirely sure what posting on top of that small gap that you've created will do, when the whole point of doing that 2mm gap there was to equalize the pressure. So I imagine physics is going to rule the day here and prevent that equalization from happening, but more experienced pen folk than I would be able to say for sure. You can see on the inside of the barrel there's a tiny bit of the lubricating grease that's in there, and when I pull the piston back, it goes with it for the most part, but there's a little bit of residual left. That should not affect the ink performance in any way. This came with a bottle of the Pilot Black. This is the standard Pilot Black, not the Subaru. Because this is a brown pen and I'm in my brown era, I have decided to ink it up with Robert Oster Cafe Crema. I've been holding on to this sample since I got it for a very special brown pen, and I believe this is the one. So I'm going to go ahead and ink that up, and I would love for you to join me so you can see how this works. Sometimes when you're inking from an ink sample bottle, depending on the pen barrel that you're choosing, it's difficult to get a clean fit in here. The goal is to submerge the ink nib past the breather hole before you activate your filling system, whether it's a traditional piston or a vac filler like this, or even a cartridge converter. Sometimes these sample bottles have a narrow diameter compared to the diameter of the barrel. Some pens are much larger than others. This looks like it's going to fit just fine, so we're going to be able to dunk this in past the breather hole. I'm pretty much all the way down to the bottom of the ink sample bottle. And I'm going to activate the piston by drawing it up all the way and then pushing down. You'll hear some bubble action. You'll know the breather hole is submerged at that point. And when you get to that spot where it clicks, the ink that's available will fully draw up. Now, this ink sample bottle was not full when I got it. If it had been full, I'd have a much larger draw. But I could always empty, and it's the same process to empty. You pull the piston back up, and as you push down, the ink is discharged back into the sample bottle, and then you can submerge and try again. Sometimes multiple draws like this will result in a fuller draw. Got a tiny bit more on that side, but here's one more trick that I've learned. Let's go ahead and empty this out again one more time. Now, this trick you'll want to be pretty careful with because it involves tipping. You're going to have the front side of the nib, or the breather hole, facing towards you, and you're going to tip this so that more of the front side of the nib is covered before you activate it. So you're going to want this on a firm surface, not on your lap, and you'll want to apply a tiny bit of downward pressure, not too much because you don't want the ink to skitter off that way. A tiny bit of downward pressure so it's nice and stable, and then activate your piston. And having it on an angle like that should result in more of the face of the nib being covered and a larger draw. That's the biggest draw I've gotten so far. And I've only got a tiny bit left in the bottom of that ink sample. So I'm going to leave that in there because I'd like to use that as part of my ink swatch. So I wipe a little bit of the nib off, conserving ink, never waste a drop, and then take just a tiny piece of kitchen towel, fold it over a couple of times so it can't soak through and stain your fingers, and just give the shoulders of the pen a nice clean and lightly draw it down the face of the nib. You're not trying to agitate the paper so much that any loose fibers can get caught in the tines, because the last thing you want to do is get a nib blockage by getting too aggressive with that. You can see there's a tiny amount of ink left on the feed, and that means that this is primed and ready to go. This should write beautifully now at this point, and all that ink is sloshing around in there, gorgeous and ready to use. So let's set that aside for just a moment. I'm going to grab my commonplace notebook, where I'm going to do some ink swatching. I learned this setup from my friend Elora Jean on TikTok. So I'm going to do this in my commonplace notebook because I figured this is a great quality paper. This is a Life Noble note section. I got this from the Hachimanjaya online store. It's one of their exclusive colorways and it's really pretty. But this Life Noble notebook paper is stunning paper and really good for viewing qualities of ink that are available. So I'm going to do a little bit of a crib on Elora Jean's style in a little bit. And what she does is draw a rectangle following the grid lines on a piece of paper. Using the ink in the nib you just inked up. And this just makes a tidy capture zone. And I'm going to take a watercolor brush and dip it in. It's probably best to have a dedicated water brush for fountain pen inks because some of them can stain. And I'm just going to fill in that outlined square as neatly as I can. I've got a lot of ink on there, so I'm going to take some of that back off and draw some of this down. It's still a lot of ink. So what I will do is dry off my brush so I can create a wicking situation. Now with a dry brush, I can pull up some of that ink so that it is not overly saturated. This way you get a full representation of the color available, any sheening or shimmer properties depending on the ink that you've chosen. And I might put just a tiny bit of this ink back through the bottom section so that you can see some shading. That's a nice way to see some shade properties. Just dabble a little bit on there. And then I will take a separate brush. I'll go for a rounded tip brush. This one's a size 8. And I'm going to take just a little bit of that ink and just do a little squiggle across the top. And you're getting some ink puddle effects. So you can see shading in this as well. I might go back and just touch it up a little bit. That way you can get a really good visual representation of what this ink does. I also really like to check out what happens with fountain pen ink on kitchen towel because it is so absorbent. I've got a little vial sample of just fresh water, and I'm going to take a pipette, clean pipette, and just drop a couple drops on this ink swatch. And while that does its magic, look like to write a sample. I have a desk calendar from a company called Birds. They do really beautiful illustrations of gorgeous birds with wildly vulgar captions for them, and the juxtaposition just tickles every aspect of my being. So I love this calendar, and when I need a quote for something, I'll typically reach for that. Now, there's a nice little sample for everybody to take a look at and check out the chromatograph. So you can see a lot of the gold undertones, but notice in the edge, let me get close so you can see, there's a really pretty minty blue outline, and that subtle undercolor gives the undiluted ink a very crispy, cool tone. Even though it's a golden ink, it's perfectly balanced and neutral, and it's just a stunner. It really does look like I've dripped freshly brewed espresso and used that as my ink. I love that stuff. I definitely think a full bottle is in order. So there you have it. That is my new baby. I will be using that for the next couple of days. Look at that shading. That is beautiful. The tiniest bit of ghosting on some thicker quality Life Noble paper. This is not Tomoe River, Bible paper. This is a little bit thicker. I don't know exactly what the GSM is on these. I don't read Japanese. It may say back there, but you can feel by the touch of this. This is thicker than Tomoe River, so I wouldn't expect bleed through. A little bit of ghosting is perfectly fine, especially considering how much I laid down on there. So that's a really great ink, a really great pen. I'm very excited to add this to my collection, and thank you to Elora Jean on TikTok for turning me onto this beauty of a pen. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you liked this video, please click all of the buttons. I need lots of interactions to grow this channel, so like it, subscribe to it, comment on it. I will reply to every comment, I promise. Give me a follow, all of the things. I appreciate your help. I love interacting with you. I hope you have a great day, and take care of yourself and take care of each other. Bye-bye now.